Harm's Way is an American hardcore band that has gained recognition over nearly 2 decades for its contributions to heavy music. Originating as an underground favorite, the band has evolved into a notable force within the hardcore punk and metal genres. Known for their continuous reinvention and absorption of diverse musical influences, they've crafted songs that have shaped the trajectory of heavy music. Their latest album, Common Suffering, slated for a September 29th release via Metal Blade, represents a significant milestone, featuring an ambitious sound in collaboration with prominent producer Will Yip at Studio 4 in Pennsylvania. The album explores themes such as chaos, misanthropy, and many others. With the release of this album, Harm's Way continues to challenge the conventions of hardcore music, pushing into uncharted territories and exemplifying a commitment to creative growth and innovation. With me today is Chris Mills. Thank you for speaking with me today, Chris.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So, right off the bat, you guys have changed so much since the beginning. What sparked this transformation, this shift in Common Suffering? How's working with Nick Gaudier been for you?
Yeah, I mean, Nick is an incredible human being, incredible songwriter. You know, Nick and I kind of go back, to like the early 2010s, I would say. I knew Nick before that, but I moved to Milwaukee for a little bit, doing some grad school stuff up there. Nick and I ended up getting together, doing a band called Iron Cages. It was just kind of like a crust punk band. And it was like from then on, I was just like, holy shit, I love writing music and working with this guy. A year or so after Rust came out, and we were looking for someone to tour with us on guitar, and it was kind of like a no-brainer for me. Nick was the first name that popped to mind. I kind of like pitched him to the band, and he ended up linking up with us, and it worked quite well, just personality-wise. Great fit, obviously creatively, amazing fit. And slowly he went from touring member to someone who took a pivotal role in our band. And we saw that with Posthuman. He was a huge contributor on that record. And between Posthuman to Common Suffering, took a pretty heavy hand in the songwriting process and really helped us continue to fully realize our sound and take it to places that we always wanted it to go, but didn't necessarily have kind of the collaborative kind of partners to really make that happen. And Nick really helped take it to that place, especially with Common Suffering. It was awesome working with Nick and Casey too. He's our bass player and does a lot of like our programming and samples and stuff like that. But the two of them just took the ball and ran with it with Common Suffering and really helped bring a lot of really cool and fresh ideas to the table. Really made for a really cool songwriting and creative process that spanned across a lot of time, from the early parts of the pandemic over Zoom to finally getting able to be together and write together again towards the mid to latter parts of it, and then continuing on to the pre-production phase with Will Yip at Studio 4. So yeah, overall, it's been awesome. Philosophically, as a band, we've never wanted to stay stagnant. We never wanted to write the same record over and over and over again. If that was the case, we probably would have broke up a long time ago. But Harm's Way is a huge creative outlet for us and a big vehicle for us in terms of self-exploration and connection with each other and our fan base and the DIY community as a whole. So we never wanted to stay stagnant. We always wanted to grow. And it's kind of just been our approach always since like day one of doing the band. And the minute that ends, we probably end. But we feel like we're in a really healthy place and good spot with that.
You mentioned that it's a large creative output for yourselves. Cyanide dives deep into media madness. How would you say music's been helping you navigate this mess? And what's the big takeaway you ideally want fans to take away from that?
Cyanide kind of looks at obviously like the current cultural kind of climate, right? And how media plays a big role in shaping that climate, and kind of living in this age of disinformation and feeling more polarized than ever as a society. I think music can kind of live, and I take that back. There's like the Kid Rocks of the world and stuff, but like music can live like kind of independent to some of that that noise, right, in its truest and purest form, and can be something that is way more objective, right, in terms of self-expression and even analyzing themes like we analyze in cyanide and just saying like, hey, like this is what's fucking happening, and this is how, and this is the impact it's kind of having on you and us communities like around the world, and like what are we really going to like do about that? It can feel so obviously like debilitating and so demoralizing at times, but I think like especially in spaces like punk and hardcore metal and other kind of more DIY spaces, I think we can like take a more objective view at that, and be far more analytical in terms of like recognizing the impacts that it has on us and the community at large. And I think cyanide's like really trying to do that, obviously in like some bleak ways, but also in some ways of trying to like kind of challenge listeners to take like a closer look at what they're consuming and how it is like affecting them as a whole.
It's an interesting theme because I think one of the biggest things that faces people in punk and hardcore, underneath that lid, there's this really weird confluence or meeting up of misanthropy, nihilism, cynicism. Is it more potent or most potent in that scene? What is the result on the people that are in that scene?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think punk and hardcore and like you know uh, are spaces where people feel hopefully feel safe and vulnerable enough to kind of take those emotions and like take those feelings and really like kind of voice them and maybe even find community around them, right? Like it's a subculture for a reason, right? Because look, like if I might not be able to say like the things that I want to say and feel in mainstream society or even in my family or at my job or whatever, right? And I think punk and hardcore can, and obviously this is idealistic, but can provide a space where like, okay, like you can take some of this misanthropy, you can take some of this nihilism, you could take your existential crises and like put that out there for others to see. And look, there might be a lot of people that feel the same way as you, and there can be this shared experience, right? And in that, I think there is some kind of beauty, right? Because in a lot of ways, and I guess if I'm speaking from my own experience, like those communities gave me a place to call home and find commonalities, and in a lot of ways start to reframe my view on the world and actually undo some of the misanthropic feelings or the sense of or like this existential crisis I found myself in as like a late teen, so to speak, right? Because society as a whole, or this mainstream society, so to speak, I felt pretty ostracized and I guess estranged from, so to speak. So I think those themes are like kind of quite common, right? Because obviously like the groundwork has been laid from like the founding folks who started this whole thing, right? Or the scene, so to speak, and then it's just been obviously like it's saying like, hey, it's okay to bring that stuff here and to explore that stuff here and to process that stuff here. And like I said, from my own experience, I was able to find a lot of peace and community through that, and actually like a lot more hope than I ever thought.
You speak about community, and that is the defining feature of our genre. And I'm going to widen it up a bit here, but you're going to be embarking on a tour again, and that must be beyond exciting because now that things are properly opening up, you guys get to branch out and to go outward, sort of explode from the stasis that we've all been in. Are there any particular people, places, communities you're looking forward to visiting? Obviously, all of them isn't a totally acceptable answer, but are there any ones that you wanted to specifically shout out or mention?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is our first tour in like 4 years, which is crazy to like think about, right? And in a lot of ways, we're just super grateful and excited just to have the opportunity after all the time that has passed to be able to share this record that we feel really happy with and proud of with the rest of the world, and particularly North America here. We've done a handful of shows over the last, I should say, over the course of the pandemic. We did the Chicago record release for the Isolation re-release. We did it for the children in LA. We did a fest in Orlando, but it's been really scarce. But I think I'm like really excited to get back to Middle America again. And, that might sound crazy for some of my bandmates to hear, because we've had, and this is no dig at Middle America. We've been banned for a long time, and we've definitely played some shot shows in Middle America, but also as we've grown, like we've had some of the most amazing shows we've played just because the appreciation. But like, thinking like, shit, when am I going to be in Kansas City again playing a show? Like, I can't imagine being in Salt Lake City again playing a show, but we get those opportunities. And that's really cool. And we're really excited for that. Super stoked to get back to Toronto, get back to Canada and play some shows, because that's always been almost like a second or third hometown for us. We've always done really well there and always felt really appreciated and loved. So really excited to be able to go north of the border again, play some shows again during the pandemic. It's like, are we ever going to be able to play Canada again? Like, I'm going to go overseas. So, as a whole, it's like, I think we're just so excited to just be able to play again and travel. And I feel like we're getting like a second chance at this experience, a second chance at the ability to like kind of share our work with others. Because I'll say over the pandemic, there was so much uncertainty, even for us as a band, like, because we were obviously like forced to make pretty tough decisions about work and profession and careers and stuff like that, to obviously keep our heads above water, and in some ways I felt like music and Harm's Way was almost kind of becoming secondary, which was like really weird, because it was such an integral part of our lives for so long. But obviously over time we and kind of writing this record, creating this record, recording this record, and kind of seeing it through, we felt like we had to, and the opportunity to still be able to do it, and that there's still excitement, across the country for people to see us, just feels amazing.
And I literally cannot count the amount of people that would be very excited as well for you to revisit north of the border as well. And I know there's at least one other guy that would be. I noticed there's one subtle shout out to you guys. I was watching The Bear, season 1, Maddie Matheson. His character's wearing a Harm's Way shirt. And I thought that was just, I don't know, the coolest meeting of things that I appreciate. And first of all, I wanted to ask, do you know Maddie personally, or have you ever met?
Yeah, so I've never met Maddie, but if we're going back in time, we played Parts and Labor. We played his venue. We may have met then. At that time, he was always so gracious with bands coming through. He'd cook for them, hang out with them, do all that. I don't think I ever met Maddie, but I think he does know our guitar player, Bo. Bo interviewed him with his co-host Colin for a podcast they do called Hard Lore. So there's always been like a relationship with Maddie, sometimes indirectly, but now more directly, I would say. But the whole thing with like the shirt, it kind of like came out of nowhere. I think, obviously Maddie's a fan of hardcore and punk, and I think, from my understanding, he was like, oh, I'm gonna be in Chicago, I'm gonna be on a show that, is in Chicago. I need to wear a Harm's Way shirt. One of our good friends saw the tweet and just delivered the shirt to him. I was like, oh, here, you can have one of my old ones. And that's what ended up making it on the show. It was so fucking cool. And it was funny because I would, I think after season 1 began to air, I was just getting like screenshots left and right, or like text left and right. It's like normal ass people I know are just like, hey, is this your band? So it was like a crazy full circle moment, like when I'm hearing from people from high school, or like, family friends, about them seeing my band's shirt in a show. It was really cool. But obviously, like, shout out to Maddie for doing that, and such a cool nod to us, and obviously the city of Chicago.
I'm really heartened to hear that you guys have been just exploring what you needed to. And moving back to the album for a second here, I wanted to know what it was like. Basically, I'm wondering how. I feel as though the album really captures the last 3 years perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree, first of all, and can you put your finger on why that is? I know that I can, but I would prefer to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. You know, and it's interesting because that that wasn't necessarily like, and James could probably speak a little bit more on this, but hey, he's my best friend, I'll speak for him. The intention wasn't to be like, okay, we're gonna make a record that encapsulates everything we've gone through individually, collectively, on a societal level. If anything, James typically writes from a very introspective, intrapersonal sort of level, and it was kind of like upon seeing the lyrical themes, upon seeing the collection of songs and listening to the record and the textures on it, that it was almost like, in research they talk about inductive stuff and deductive stuff, right, in terms of like theory or hypothesis. It was something that we deducted almost from the finished piece, right? And we're like, holy shit, this gets at so much. This gets at the individual experience over the last 3 years. This gets at the collective experience. Like, it looks at such larger, like larger structures that have also been impacted by what has, kind of happened over the past few years. And it was again, it was something we were able to deduct thematically and be like, holy shit, it kind of came together on its own. It was just really interesting to come to that conclusion, or come to that point with the album. So yeah, I mean, I think it really does, and it was accidental in some ways, but overall it really helped us come to that title, Common Suffering, right? Because obviously, like, it's James's individual experiences, personal experiences across the lyrics, but it felt so universal in some ways too, right?
I wanted to ask about the artwork because I feel like it's so beautifully emblematic and representative of the music, but also where we're all sort of at and where we've come from. That woodcut style image. There's lots to unpack there, but I'm wondering what your involvement was in the process of the development of that artwork, what your feeling on it and your reaction to it.
Yeah, 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 totally. So the cover art and back piece on Common Suffering actually were pre-existing pieces by this artist, Corran Brownlee, who's also a fellow Canadian. But like, yeah, amazing human being. But it was work that I had come across, and just felt like this visceral kind of reaction to when I like first saw it. Yeah, I had this emotional reaction to it, and it's something I shared with our group of guys and our team, and I was like, hey, I really like this, and I'm kind of having these feelings about it.
Hmm.
And in some ways, I feel like it encapsulates and kind of captures a lot of the themes found on this record, you know. And we kind of sat with it for a while and thought about it, and I said, fuck it, one day. I was like, I'm just gonna like reach out to him and just say what's up and just let him know how much I admire his work and how cool it would be to consider working together and like kind of shoot my shot, so to speak. And Corn was so cool and so open, and it just felt like there was this like alignment in terms of just like vision and like mutual respect. He was just kind of like, oh yeah, hey, heard your band too, you guys are fucking awesome, like it'd be an honor to like work together and stuff. And it just felt great. There's like kind of harmony between the two of us. And like, for me personally, like I love working with people who are philosophically aligned with us, dynamically aligned with us. Like, if I'm gonna bring you on, or if you're gonna bring us on, I want to be able to ride for each other and have this shared mutual respect. That's just kind of how I try to operate at this point with my work. So yeah, sorry, I'm getting off track there, but just the work as a whole and his work as a whole, it felt so aligned with lyrical themes and the collective kind of nature, of the work itself, and it creating anxiety and panic and fear and distress. It felt like it just lined up so well. And I would listen to our songs and look at the art. I would do that to just see how it felt. And again, I felt that alignment. I felt like it just worked so well. And now I look at those pieces and I hear our songs, right? I look at those pieces and it just lines up in such a beautiful way. And I think that just kind of speaks volumes to the synchronicity between our work and his work, so to speak. So yeah, we're really excited about it. It's a bit of a departure from like Posthuman, which was kind of minimalist and clean, but Posthuman was the way it was for a reason, and Common Suffering is the way it is for a reason. And Corran was just such an amazing partner in helping bring our vision. I shouldn't say bring our vision to light, but aligning with our vision for us to create this shared piece.
So Devour hits on toxic relationships. How much of that is from personal experience, and what do you want to say to others that are stuck in those situations?
Yeah, totally. Knowing James and kind of knowing more of the context behind that song, I would say it's, and he'd be okay with me sharing this, but it's definitely from personal experiences, or a personal experience for him. And I would say in a lot of ways, personal experiences for all of us, right? I think many of us have probably found ourselves in places where we were in these relationships that were really tough to navigate and kind of soul sucking in a sense, and disproportionately weighted in one direction or the other, and I actually like this question because, look, I'm a therapist. I have opinions on relationships, I guess. And I guess what I would want to share is just there's always a way out, right? And sometimes the best medicine for that is writing about it or talking about it. I mean, Devour was written as a means for probably like processing for James and catharsis, right? To work through that experience for him. And look, boundaries are awesome. Boundaries exist for a reason in relationships. And sometimes you got to learn the hard way how to set those and how to define those for yourself, but yeah, I love that song, obviously on a music level, but on a lyrical level, just because I think it is obviously so relatable to so many people.
I actually wanted to unpack just a little bit. It's the same tired observation that people always offer us, people that are outsiders from hardcore and punk and metal and any other heavy genre. And many others that are like sort of adjacent. Like I'm sure that people outside of drill sometimes go, what's with that music, and how do you possibly gain anything from it? What would you say, wearing your therapist's hat or not, whichever you prefer? But I'd be really curious to see your take on that, where people can gain that benefit.
I guess what I hear you asking me is how might outsiders, I'll put that in quotes, kind of view this subculture, view metal, hardcore, heavy music in general, and what I want to say to those people in terms of like what do people get from this, like I mean, I think this kind of goes back to one of the earlier questions you asked me when we were kind of exploring concepts of misanthropy and nihilism and kind of all this darkness, so to speak, quote unquote. I would say, look, this music, these scenes are an outlet for that, right? Because we all have negative emotion, we all struggle, right? And we got to find somewhere to process that and put that and cope with that, right? And I think this music, our music, these scenes create a space for that to happen in a healthy and productive way, hopefully. Obviously, there's like that's idealistic, right? But the hope is that it creates an outlet for people to explore and process that stuff, and hopefully let it go too. And in addition to that, it's community, right? It's relationships, it's feeling seen, right? It's like all these things that maybe many struggle to find in larger society.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. And it's been such a pleasure. And just getting to understand a little bit more about the process behind the album, and hearing that you will, in fact, be coming up to Toronto is very exciting, not just for me, but for many people I know. Again, thank you so much for taking the time with us. And yeah, all the best. And you can get Common Suffering when it comes out on September 29th via Metal Blade.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate the time and space to kind of talk today, and hope to provide more context and this, our thinking and just the album as a whole.